This film is set in the 12th century in France. At the beginning of the film, we are shown a priest and some gravediggers burying a woman at a crossroads, but the gravediggers don't realize that the priest is secretly stealing the woman's cross necklace. The woman turns out to be the wife of a blacksmith named Balian, who is the main character in this film. Balian looks very depressed and feels guilty because his wife decided to commit suicide after experiencing a miscarriage. While they are burying Balian's wife, a group of crusaders comes through the crossroads and tells them to get out of the way. The crusaders are led by a noble knight named Godfrey. After years of living in Jerusalem, Godfrey finally returns to his homeland to visit his son, who turns out to be Balian. Godfrey wants to meet Balian to make a confession that he is his father and wants to atone for his sin of abandoning him and his mother. When he arrives in the village, Godfrey recalls his good memories he had with Balian's mother, the woman he loved so much. As an apology for all his mistakes in the past, Godfrey tries to explain everything to Balian, and he invites Balian to come with him to the Holy Land, which will make his life better. Although he keeps persuading him, Balian refuses his offers and chooses to live in poverty as a blacksmith in his homeland. Godfrey respects his decision and won't force him to come along, but before leaving, he tells Balian the route to Jerusalem in case he changes his mind. The priest tries to provoke Balian to go to Jerusalem in order for him to claim the land and all property belonging to Balian in the village, but Balian has decided to stay in the village. When the priest talks about his wife, Balian realizes that the priest has stolen his wife's necklace, so he is furious and immediately kills the priest by throwing him into the fire. After the incident, Balian rushes to leave the village and go to Jerusalem to catch up with Godfrey because he knows he will be crucified for the murder of a priest. After a long journey, Balian has finally caught up with his father, and Godfrey will gladly take him to Jerusalem. Balian tells his father that he wants to come to Jerusalem so that all his sins can be forgiven. While they are training, a group of French knights come and ask Godfrey to hand over Balian because he had killed a priest. Godfrey and his friends try to protect Balian, although Balian himself has admitted that he is the murderer. The French knights leave them at first, but it turns out that they have prepared a plan to attack them suddenly from all directions.
There's a fly!
Although the French knights outnumbered them and managed to kill some of their friends, Godfrey is finally able to win the battle. However, he is seriously injured after an arrow pierces his body. They have no choice but to continue their journey to the port of Messina to be able to cross the sea to Jerusalem. When they arrive at a campsite and meet with other crusaders, a noble knight named Lusignan comes up to Godfrey and takes the time to mock him after learning that Godfrey brought his illegitimate son to the Holy Land. They finally arrive at the port of Messina, but Godfrey's condition is getting worse at the same time. He tells Balian that he used to be a man from the sewers who didn't even have a home, but that all changed when he went to the Holy Land, and now he is the master of the city. Godfrey dreams of the kingdom of heaven and hopes that one day the crusade will end so that Muslims and Christians can live side by side in peace. In the moments before his death, Godfrey bequeathed his sword and crowned Balian as the knight and also Baron of Ibelin to replace him. On the following day, Balian continues his journey to Jerusalem via the Mediterranean Sea, but on the way to Jerusalem, the ship is hit by a storm and is unable to withstand the fierce waves that make the ship and all the passengers sink. But apparently, Balian miraculously wakes up in the desert with a horse who also managed to survive the incident. After a while, come two Muslim men who are a master and his slave. The slave translates his master's words and accuses Balian of having stolen his horse and asks him to hand over the horse. Even though Balian has explained that he is the Baron of Ibelin and the horse is his, the man immediately attacks Balian because the Baron of Ibelin he knew was an old man. The slave tells them to stop fighting, but Balian ends up killing the man. Balian chooses to forgive the slave on the condition that he has to take him to Jerusalem. Arriving in Jerusalem, Balian frees the slave and gives him his horse as a reward for bringing him to the Holy Land. The slave praises Balian and tells him that the Muslim man he had killed was one of the Muslim cavalry commanders. When Balian is walking in the market, some knights secretly follow him from behind because they see Godfrey's sword with him. Apparently, they are Godfrey's loyal soldiers, and one of them starts to ask him some questions. After they are sure that Balian is the son of Godfrey, they immediately take him to the palace. Balian's life changes because now he becomes master of the city and inherits everything from his father. Balian is invited to meet his father's best friend named Tiberius, and he is introduced as the new Baron of Ibelin to replace Godfrey. At that meeting, he meets Princess Sibylla, who is the sister of King Baldwin, and it turns out that she is also the wife of Lusignan. However, Guy decides to leave the meeting after realizing that Balian is at the banquet. Shortly after, Balian is asked to meet the king who is waiting for him. King Baldwin is a wise king who for the past 6 years has managed to make peace with Salahuddin, although leprosy forced him to wear a mask and live in loneliness. King Baldwin greatly appreciated Balian because Godfrey was his father's confidant and he was the first to cry when Baldwin was diagnosed with leprosy. Baldwin gives full power over Eexplained to Balian and advises him to do goodness to anyone because all religions are accepted in Jerusalem. Arriving in Eexplained, the first thing that Balian does is dig as many wells as possible to make the area fertile. Balian prospers the land and brings everyone together regardless of religion. However, the conflict between Muslims and Christians reemerges after a Templar knight named Reynold provokes Guy to attack Muslim caravans and breaks the agreement between Salahuddin and Baldwin. A few days later, King Baldwin receives news that Salahuddin and his troops have crossed Jordan with 200,000 soldiers, which means Salahuddin has declared war against them. King Baldwin is worried, so he decides to lead his army to meet Salahuddin before he arrives at the Crusade castle, and he will try to negotiate with him. Balian, who knows the news, immediately rushes towards the Crusade castle with his soldiers. When he gets there first, Reynold asks him and his knights to stay in the castle. But Balian refuses because they will not be able to withstand the attacks of the Muslim armies if they stay inside the fort. Therefore, he decides to attack the Muslim troops so that they can buy time until King Baldwin arrives there. After a fierce battle, Balian and his armies are defeated and have to surrender to the Muslim army. However, Balian is surprised when a Muslim knight forgives him and does not execute him. A slave who had been released by him turns out to be one of the Muslim commanders, and in return for Balian's kindness, the Muslim man frees him as a prisoner just like Balian did before. Shortly after, King Baldwin and his crusaders arrive. In the midst of the tension, King Baldwin and Salahuddin meet face to face to negotiate. Baldwin promises to punish Reynold, who has violated the agreement between them. Salahuddin agrees to the deal and offers to send his healer to treat him. Afterwards, Baldwin heads to Crusade Castle to punish Reynold in front of the Templar Knights. He immediately slaps Reynold many times and forces him to kiss his hand.
Give me the kiss of peace.
But afterwards, King Baldwin's health worsens and he is unable to even stand up. Guy believes that his ambition to become king will be realized soon because if Baldwin dies, his son from his marriage with Sibylla will become heir to the throne. A few days later, King Baldwin's condition has improved, and then he holds a secret meeting with Balian and Tiberius. He tells Balian that he is very worried that if he dies, Guy will create a conflict and declare war on Muslims. Therefore, he offers Balian to marry his sister, which will give him control over all the army while Guy himself will be executed. Balian vows to protect Sibylla or the next king, but he refuses the offer to marry Sibylla. Sibylla is very disappointed after learning that Balian has turned down the opportunity to marry her. Although she tries to persuade him, Balian refuses because he is not a man like Guy. A few days later, Baldwin's condition worsens again. In the seconds before his death, he recalls his first victory against Salahuddin when he was 16 years old. After King Baldwin passes away, the throne will be succeeded by his nephew, who is the son of Sibylla. However, an oddity appears when Sibylla helps her son sign some royal letters, where her son seems to feel nothing when hot drops of ink hit his hands. Sibylla immediately asks a doctor to examine her son, and it turns out that her son also has leprosy like his uncle. This makes Sibylla very depressed because she has to accept the fact that her son will definitely wear a mask like his uncle. Sibylla doesn't want her son to suffer, so she finally decides to kill him by inserting poison into his ear. With his son's death, Guy is finally crowned as the king, and now he has full control over Jerusalem. Baldwin's worries come true because Guy has conspired with Reynold to declare war on Muslims. The first thing they do is order some Templar knights to kill Balian, who has a fairly strong influence in Eexplained. However, Balian manages to defeat them all even though he is also injured and falls unconscious. Then Reynold begins to carry out his next plan by attacking a Muslim village and cruelly killing Salahuddin's sister. The massacre makes Salahuddin furious, so he immediately sends his envoy to Jerusalem. Salahuddin asks Guy to return his sister's body and hand over Reynold's head. But this war is what Guy wants, so he gives Salahuddin an answer by killing the envoy, which will cause war to be inevitable. When Guy is preparing all the Crusaders and their war strategies, he is surprised by the arrival of Balian, who is still alive. Balian disagrees with Guy's strategies and advises them to defend Jerusalem because he believes Salahuddin is luring them out to fight in the open. On the other hand, they are too far from any water source that would benefit Salahuddin and his army. However, Guy remains in his stance to go out and attack the Muslim army even though he won't get the support of Tiberius, who chooses not to give his soldiers to fight with him. The battle is called the Battle of Hittin, which will mark the defeat of the Crusaders against the Muslims and also the end of their kingdom in Jerusalem. Guy's decision to attack the Muslims in an open area finally allowed Saladin's troops to defeat them easily. Guy and Reynold are finally captured as captives. Saladin will let Guy live and say that the king doesn't kill the king, but he will execute Reynold immediately as revenge for killing his sister. After the battle is over, Balian and Tiberius come to the battlefield, which is littered with the Crusaders' corpses. Tiberius invites Balian to come with him to Cyprus because now he realizes that all this time he had not fought for God, but only fought for property and land. Balian refuses to go with him and chooses to remain in Jerusalem and defend the city. Upon his return to Jerusalem, Balian immediately prepares all his strategies to defend the city's forts from Muslim attacks. Although the city no longer has knights, Balian tries to encourage the people and enthrone all the men who can take up arms as knights. He asks everyone to join in defending the city no matter what. When night falls, Saladin begins to attack the city's defenses by bombarding their forts with ballista weapons. Balian initially chooses to wait due to their limited resources, but after seeing the attack on the first day of the battle, Balian finally realizes that he has to change his strategy and make a pact with Saladin before the Muslim army can enter the city. On the second day of the battle, Saladin and his army continue to launch relentless attacks to destroy the fort. But the resistance of Balian and his knights amazes him because they keep trying to defend the city and manage to destroy some of the weapons belonging to the Muslims. Then one of the Muslim spies informs Saladin of the location of the weakest fort that will lead to the entrance to the city. Meanwhile, Sibylla decides to shave her hair because she believes that the Muslims will be able to enter the city sooner or later. On the following day, Saladin begins to order his army to carry out an attack targeting the weakest fort. After several days of fighting, the Muslims are finally able to destroy the fort. The remaining Christian knights try to put up a fight against the thousands of Muslim soldiers who have entered the city, although eventually their resistance is futile and they are defeated. After the battle ends, Saladin offers Balian to negotiate. Balian initially refuses to surrender and chooses to die with the destruction of Jerusalem. But the wise Saladin gives him a deal in which he promises not to kill anyone in the city, including women, children, and the elderly, on the condition that Balian must surrender Jerusalem to the Muslims. Balian finally agrees with the deal and is forced to hand over Jerusalem to Saladin. He is surprised that Saladin doesn't take revenge for what the Crusaders did when they captured Jerusalem by massacring everyone in the city 100 years ago.
Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.
All the people rejoice at the agreement made by Balian, even though they have to return to Europe and surrender the city to the Muslims. The Christians flock back to their homeland in Europe, while Saladin and the Muslims celebrate their victory in retaking Jerusalem from the Crusaders. Balian returns home to France and takes Sibylla with him. At the end of the film, King Richard the Lionheart and the Crusaders come to France and look for Balian to invite him to help regain Jerusalem from Muslim hands. However, Balian says that he is not a knight but just a blacksmith.